And so I guess everyone feels that they win if they survive.
Welcome to the Classic Adventure Gaming Podcast. My name is Gus, and have I got an episode for you today. I had the pleasure to sit down and speak with several winners of the esteemed No Artpunk III contest, including one of our panel members here on the show who puts on that particular contest, Prince of Nothing. Prince has just released a massive tome of all the NAP 3 winning adventures. So if you've never had the opportunity to experience high-level adventure gaming, or maybe you're interested in running more high-level adventures in your campaigns or improving your high-level design chops, you are in for a treat today. Per usual, please see the show notes for links to itch.io, where you can download both the NAP 2 and the NAP 3 adventures, and I'll also link back to the original NAP 1 release at DriveThru for your convenience. And before we get started, just a couple of items I'd like to call to your attention as well. Here at the Classic Adventure Gaming Podcast, we will be accepting call-in questions and comments for future episode discussions. I'm still setting up the methods for those calls, and we'll release that number when it's ready. So be on the lookout for that announcement on future episodes, and obviously, of course, over at the CAG Discord server. Secondly, fairly big announcement, Fight On Magazine is starting back up again. And if you're interested in submitting an article for publication, hop on over to the Discord server linked in the show notes, and you can chat with Mr. Ignatius Umlaut himself. Now, let's get on with the show and jump into it with the winners of No Artpunk 3. Well, everybody, welcome to the show. We got a good one for you today. Joining us is Prince of Nothing. He has recently wrapped up his No Artpunk 3 competition, and we've got several of the gentlemen that have taken top prize in that particular competition. But just for everybody that is unaware of it, we're going to go ahead and have Prince introduce the competition, what it entailed, and give us a little bit of a summary.
Thanks a lot, Gus. Hello, everyone. Prince of Nothing, always are my tag reviewer and occasional adventure writer. And what NAP is for a while now, so I've been a little bit of background. I've been reviewing and playing adventures and writing adventures for OSR material for a while now. And at some point, I kind of started to notice a drift in the type of stuff that was getting traction, that was popular, that was getting out, and a lot. I kind of noticed that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the adventures that were being published, these were all there was a certain style to them, right? It was all like kind of like very creative, but you notice that the craftsmanship that is such a vital component of fantasy adventure gaming, it was getting lost. It became sort of like simplistic, and it became more about artistic expression and creative expression and actually playing D&D. So I tried to sort of my goal was to rectify that. And for this particular so with the contest, by the way, for this particular no art punk competition, the idea was that you all have to make an adventure, right? Um, but you have to use book monsters and book items and book spells. And what this does is sort of uh, kind of like focuses you and forces you to become like familiar with all the source material, all the tools that are already at your disposal. And in the normal format, you would be allowed one extra spell and one extra creature, of your own devising. And then you still have to make a cool adventure. It still has to be good, still has to be exciting, all that stuff. That was normal no art punk, right? Because all those other modules were like art punky modules, no art punk. For this one, I wanted to do something different. I noticed that not only was there like uh, all this sort of creative, low effort, um, airy fairy work, I don't want to say, but like structurally unsound work. But I also noticed that increasingly you would have a lot of material come out for rules light systems. So it was already kind of like primitive, and it became even more primitive. And the few adventures that came out for higher level, or sorry, for more complex systems, like whatever VX or Fourth and Wizardry or what have you, it would all be adventures of level 1 to 3. So there was a whole bracket of like high level adventuring that wasn't, nobody was making it anymore. And with this competition, I added an extra sort of stipulation to it. You could use more creatures and more spells, more items, but it had to be for a minimum of level 7 or higher, right? So that was the idea of NAP 3. And with me today are some of the finalists.
Excellent. So let's go around and have you gentlemen just kind of, we'll start. I'm just going to go down the way I've got it ordered here in our particular recording session. So, Mr. Black Razor, aka JB, could you give us a quick intro into your particular adventure that you submitted?
Sure. So I've been participating in the NAP contests for the last 3 seasons. This year, my NAP entry was called Dragon Rack, and it was an adventure for levels 10 to 14. And I took my inspiration from the old Dragonlance module DL14, which is Dragons of Triumph, I believe. And when we start talking about the adventures in particular, I can talk more about that. Uh,
Nice, nice. Next up, we've got Show Me.
Well, hi everyone. My adventure was inspired by pulp stories, especially from Robert E. Howard's short stories of Lost Cities and Civilizations. And my setup was that the player characters are set out to intercept an evil magic user and his party of evil adventurers who are hellbent on acquiring a powerful magical artifact. Uh, so this magic user tries to conjure forth the capital of a fallen civilization from ancient past, which is a direct influence of Devil in Iron from Howard. And he tries to find out how to get that artifact from the past. The players can sabotage this if they are quick and inventive, but they most probably won't be able to do it in time. So the ancient capital returns from ages past, and it changes most parts of the sandbox and the sandbox part of the adventure with it. So it is a quite complex adventure because a lot of the locations have a before and an after description, and the referee has to track the passage of time and the events happening in the background with it. But this is the cost of a meaningful campaign, I guess. So this is it. Unfortunately, I was unable to finish all of the adventure that I envisioned at the first time. So this is only the hex scroll part of the adventure. And
The whole will be, I presume, available from EDMT, right?
yes, actually, Gabor has have not seen this adventure yet, and he said that he won't read it because he wants to play through it. So once I have finished the second part of it, with the actual capital and dungeon underneath it, he will want to play it. And well, if he thinks that is worth releasing as an EMDT title, I guess he will. So yeah, that's it.
We'll twist his arm. We'll twist.
Great, thank you.
That brings us to Mr. Commodore. Tell us about your adventures.
Sure thing. Actually, the descent into the Cairn of Night is kind of the opposite of Chomi's setup. I have a big, massive hex crawl that I'm currently using as my campaign. And so it's a huge hex crawl with a central kilo dungeon in the middle of it, which is the Cairn of Night. And since I already had it mostly written up, it's for my own homebrew system, but I went ahead and said, I should probably playtest this anyway before sending in my big bulk of players. So I swapped it over to Axe, which I've been using more and more for the Domains at War stuff anyway. And I lopped off the highest level sections of the Cairn of Night. The Cairn of Night itself is a ancient, massive, complex, and deep, deep, deep underground. The lowest level, the part that gave Prince a heart attack, is actually the final fortress. It entirely is designed to keep the inhabitants of a gate, a plane beyond this plane, back. I was quite honestly inspired a lot by The Mound by Lovecraft, writing under a pen name. And also, I was inspired by a little bit of the Book of Revelation, Polyton, and all that. So that's kind of the main thrust. Everybody's going into the descent of the Cairn of Night. They're looking in, they're fighting these defenses, but all the defenses are actually turned inward, which has been really fun. And I don't know how it'll go in the main campaign, but the playtest group, it actually ended with them breaking the gate and not being able to reseal it. So it ended with them destroying the world, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, I remember reading it. The thing that gave me a heart attack was mostly just organization and correlating all of it. I had to make a second attempt. I remember that the first time I was like, "This is fucking bullshit. I can't do this." And then I had a good night of sleep, and I tried it again, and then I was like, "Oh, actually, most of this is sort of lines up." But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that. I feel that a big challenge with high level adventures, which are more complex than the lower level ones and have a lot more moving parts, is to sort of, especially for a more like modern audience, um, to find ways to help the DM out and help him organize all of the information. How you present it is uh, it is important. Not the most important, but definitely factors into whether it'll actually be. But yeah, you had a cool entry.
Very cool. That brings us to Mr. Nick. Tell us about the House of Pestilence.
Maybe do we tell the rank as well? Because Nick was the second place, second best.
Well, we can
runner-up.
we can certainly talk about why you picked others over them, and we can give the ranks. So why
We can
some
do
are
that
better
later.
than okay,
I want to speak like this again. This is the we should pay attention to this man. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Well, with that introduction, I'm Nick. I did the House of Pestilence, round levels 10 to 14 for AD&D. PC's around 1 million XP and some henchmen with half that much. Heavily based, in fact, completely derivative of the original D series, especially D3, and also meant to be an addendum to that. It is, you start with one of these noble houses, which is detailed in D3. And in that case, it's a sixth, quarter of a page, just tables of who's there, how many first level drow soldiers, etc. Take that and fully flesh out, fully give it detail. That was the original idea. The big pitch here is the demon lord Anthraxus has hidden a shard of his divinity on the material plane in the Underdark, where it is kept there, protected by a rogue house of drow. And if you can get in there, then you, the player characters, can become gods as well. And it goes from Erele Sin Lu. This assumes you've already gotten to the underworld. It starts in the citadel of the drow. So you can play through the D series and then start this right after that, assuming you didn't piss them all off and get killed. And that
Or even
introduces
worse,
you to the.
you could have sent them to Q1 instead, but you kind of redeemed the D series by giving people an alternative to Q1.
Something like that. Yeah, starting in the underworld, and then basically having like a kind of a taste course of the D series with a linear-ish series of encounters along the way, and then a more open-ended area a la D2 before reaching through multiple layers of defenses the House of Pestilence itself, with all of these elements of the Drow fortress fully keyed out, fully detailed. And if you can get past all that, which is meant to be mostly a set of social encounters, is that I think is it's the easiest way to get through it, and also I think the most interesting, because you're having to deal with the intrigues and the depravities of the Drow. If you just want to sneak through it or fight through it, you very much can. It'll probably kill you. But if you can get through it and enter the unholiest of unholies, then you have the challenge of stealing a demon lord's divinity out from under his nose.
And I recall that you wrote about like playtesting it, right? And in the beginning, there was an optional hook where they had to find like a lich. Is that right? With also with a parallel objective, that of the player characters. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, if I remember correctly, I don't remember if the no, that was if I remember correctly, the original version I submitted to you included that possibility with the lich or a
Yeah.
pseudo lich, a high level mage about to become a lich as your time pressure or your contest or your rival in getting this. What I found in that first set of playtest in that first playtest session, which only took one session, I started the players a little bit further on, is that the players knew he was their rival. They focused entirely on him, bypassed all of the intrigues, and actually managed to take him down pretty quickly with a bit of luck. So I decided that it's probably less interesting to have this rival here than just having the players having to deal with the drow themselves. Putting a pseudo lich into this scenario takes away attention from what's probably the most interesting part of the adventure. So I ripped him out, and the version that should be in the published NAP3 will be the updated version after that.
And last but certainly not least, we've got Shock. Tell us about the ice worm hold.
Yeah, so I first participated in the second No Art Punk, and then I wanted to have a little bit more style on this one. I was mostly inspired by, weirdly enough, B2 and CM2, Death's Ride, because my goal with making this particular adventure was I wanted something that people who had never done any high level play or domain play at all to look at and say, okay, this is kind of what it feels like. So that was my goal. So I've got you're just kind of given a hold immediately and told, all right, go protect it and make sure that the land is settled and you pay the king back like you're supposed to do because you're in feudalism and that sort of thing. But as you explore around and try to do all these things, you will rapidly find that there's a big lich in a castle nearby who is very anti you camping on his land, and that should elevate into a big mass combat.
The stronghold assault after. I was
Yep.
I remember that so when I viewed your work, it's kind of like something I noted that um there have been a few sort of like domain level adventures officially published by TSR in the CM series for Beckme, but those were never they never quite nailed it. Maybe it was also because Beckme was as a as a domain level system, it was kind of like bare bones. So there was something there, but it was always kind of rudimentary. And I guess the irony is that Axe, which is far more sophisticated when it comes to domain level and um, whatever battalion or company level, mass combat, um, doesn't have a lot of mass combat or domain level sort of like scenarios either. At least in its official line. I know there's a little bit out there. I've reviewed some of it, but it's very sparse. So it's cool to have like a introductory scenario that's a little bit more like mechanically grounded, out there for people to try out. That was cool.
I definitely leaned very heavily on what Axe provides, which is why I prefer Axe. It hits all my nails and pain spots with high level play in general.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and for folks that know, Commodore mentioned it, but Domains of War is in fact the module for Axe that brings in imports the mass combat rules. If you want to get that full wargaming immersion there, if you will. So, Prince, real quick, Black Razors and Chomies. We moved through them a little quick. We let them introduce them, but just want to let you give a quick your kind of breakdown of your review for both of theirs real fast.
Oh, for sure. Black Razors was Dragon Rack. Well, I mean, I've been reviewing JD's work for I believe 3 competitions now. It's always I've had the honor of playing a little bit of AD&D with him at Cauldron Con. Um, but what always strikes me is like this is a guy with a lot of like experience, and Dragon Rack is no exception. So um, what I liked about it is just the I, it, I know I say this a lot, right, with like fundamentals, but it's true in this case. I know that like what he places there, it says for like for levels 10 to 14 for AD&D, and you know some of the contestants in NAP were people that did not have a lot of experience, like JD does, right? So when he put that fortress down there, it's like you check out the encounters, you kind of try to like gauge if it would work, and you know it kind of does. The I think the one my one note is that the this was also, I believe, JD, you'd written it in a month after
Yeah,
you came back from Cauldron.
yeah, that's right.
So it didn't have the usual sort of like, what do you call that? The ostentation, you know, the short evocative description. There weren't any, you know, the layout, but it was a good solid adventure. Um, I think
Okay.
the point. No, 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 no.
I think it was I don't think my
don't
other
take
ones
it
would
like that.
be called ostentatious.
You were not you
Ostentation
were
is
not Bryce
fine.
Maxing. As simple as that. There was no
Fine.
Bryce
You're not
Maxing.
Bryce Maxing. This was like I could tell this man had a goal. Okay, for bam, like, for the
It
uh,
was getting to
or
the page
purely for the
count.
content. Yeah. Oh yeah, the page count too. Oof. Um. That. And so it's just the I think the it really is also like a kind of a complicated scenario where Tiamat headquarters, I believe. Oh, sorry, this is at least like Tiamat headquarters, and there's several cities nearby. It feels like very epic where these cities can fall, and you have a ticking clock because like certain armies will move back into the city and take their place um, in the fortress. So it kind of felt to me like a Temple of Elemental Evil, but on growth hormone. Basically, it felt it was more than that, right? But it felt like kind of like with that, with um, the different factions of differently colored dragons that all hate each other, and the ability to beat the stuffing out of Tiamat, or at least try if
It's
you
it's
wanted to.
playing out the backstory of Temple of Elemental Evil. The temple's
Yeah.
there and is thriving, and now we have the forces of good going in to shut it down. The player characters are party of adventurers that are kind of an advanced scouts, if you will. They're high level characters, they're veterans, and they're going to sneak into this place and do as much damage as possible before the armies get there because the battle itself is not um, they're not assured of victory. And I used a lot of chainmail stuff in there, or I had to create new chainmail rules that would work with
Yes,
AD&D.
that was also
Um,
sick. I love that.
yeah, in order to, and that was largely inspired by watching Settembrini play chainmail at Cauldron. Like, oh yeah, we should put some war game stuff in there. But chainmail, of course, was written years before AD&D, so there are some things that need to be updated in order to take into account the warfare. And I don't have any experience with the AD&D battle system, mass combat system that came out in the late '80s. So I used chainmail instead, which is a
Yeah,
simpler system.
I believe Battle System never really. I don't know if I don't want to say like it never really took off. I'm sure it was popular in the '80s, but I don't know. At least with this sort of revival of AD&D, I don't know a lot of people that swear by it now, right? If you talk to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons fans now, you don't find many battle system enthusiasts.
Yeah, it was only really on the market for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe not even that long, 3 years before 2nd edition AD&D came out. And then when 2nd edition comes out in '89, most of the adventures are not, they aren't even paying lip service to wargaming, right? They're more focused on the plot or the story arc of the characters. Um,
So this is kind of
so
like your sort of mythical revisionist Dragonlance. You're kind of like this is your way of saying this is what it could have been, right?
well, I have a lot of opinions of Dragonlance. I have kind of a love-hate
Looking for,
relationship with
looking
it.
forward to hearing those.
Looking forward to the episodes.
Yeah, no. Yeah. No, it's so my as I said somewhere else, my idea was to rewrite EL-14 in a way that it didn't suck because as written, it's kind of not a very good adventure at all. But that's the
Would be a
case with
good play, maybe. If you
most
just
of the
remove all
DL
the
adventures
combat.
are not. No, it's not just I mean, it's not well designed from a point of view of stalking it right or providing good challenges or providing enough treasure or anything like that. It's not designed to be played like a adventure game. It's designed to be played as a story, and it's pretty lame. Anyway, I mean, I don't want to make this about
Unlike
that.
Dragon Rack, which is cool.
It is because it's
Yeah,
a big adventure site that has challenges appropriate to high level characters and gives them a and they're free to smash and grab if they want or try to defeat the bad guys or they can throw in with the bad guys and betray the forces of good and help out the dragon armies if they want.
there you
So,
go.
yeah. I mean, that's real adventure gaming, giving players the options of what they want to do rather than force them to conform to a particular story arc.
Very nice.
May I add a few words, guys?
Always.
Of course.
What I really like this in this entry is it a little bit felt a little rough around the edges and raw, but knowing that it was written in 1 month really astonished me because uh, I have written my own entry for I don't know maybe 4 months or so, and it was done in 1 month, and it really felt complete and playable. And I like that. And not just of this entry, but all of the entries that most of the contestants try to tackle high level play in such original ways. So I had the feeling that everybody was trying their best to somehow get their grip on this, and everybody tried in a very original and an individual way. And I had this feeling about this entry as well because it is very ambitious and it actually managed to do something mm, inspiring and something that looked very playable at first sight.
Well, that was actually, I think that's why well, I say that now, why it turned out so well. But of course, you know, volume at the time of this recording, the volume has not dropped yet. So who knows? Maybe I'll get laughed at. They're all like, it sucks. This is stupid. I'm going back to Nave. Um, but my what I what I
As
like
we
so much
should.
about it, right, is that well, for I think for a dungeon of level 1 to 3, I know all dungeons are unique, blah blah blah, but it's not really true, right? There's so many good examples of how to do it that um, you can either ignore those examples and then what you make is probably not going to be that good, or it's going to be difficult to surpass. But with high level adventures, there's not a lot of high level adventures to begin with. Like even in the the old days, makes a lot of sense, right? If you play proper fantasy adventure gaming, it takes a long time to get there, to get a good campaign going. And in the OSR, there's even less of it. So this is like a golden opportunity, and it's kind of cool to see how everybody went about it. That we got so many sort of like different approaches to it and different attempts as well. Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, a lot of variation, and that was really cool to see because people get stumped about how can I even design an adventure for high level play? Well, here's 20 some different examples of how you could possibly the approach you could take. I mean, they were all interesting.
Yeah, no, that was also I guess something I wanted to show as well. Obviously, I of course entered my own competition and I declared myself the winner. but,
Shocking.
but then
Shocking.
rolled that back. Yeah, of course. um, but a part of that was also to sort of like, I mean, I think it's because this is new, you kind of want to uh you want to show that like uh that you know what you're talking about, or you want to demonstrate at least like what your vision on it is. Um, but I thought it was there were so many good entries as well from people who had not, who were not the most experienced with this type of gaming. But just to show that like this is a viable format for Dungeons and Dragons. It's not it's not it doesn't end at level 5. It is playable beyond level 10, even I would even say beyond level 14. Um, and as a way of like illustrating this is actually the case, I think this is a great competition, and I'm very pleased with the quality of the entries.
You had a good mixture of the various lineages too. People
Yes,
here are the two. There's two acts people, which is basically Rule Cyclopedia BX line, and you have Chomi with Swords and Wizardry, and then you have a couple AD&D people here. I think AD&D was the majority of your winners, but you had Advanced OSE, you had all kinds of things from the various different traditions of OD&D, AD&D, and BX.
yes. We even had OSE, just straight OSE, no ice. I think a little advanced. Some people dipped into advanced OSC. We have two. I call them. I probably shouldn't call them axes. We have two two act players here, or act DMs. Yeah, I think act is my one. Um, it's not quite. It's like a very advanced, elaborate form of BX, I think. But I feel like it belongs in this mental canon of like it's similar enough to these old school games that I feel like it would only improve if I would allow it. So yeah.
Well, one of my playtest players was a Rule Cyclopedia head, and he felt right at home. I've actually never played Rule Cyclopedia version, but he was
Oh,
extremely
I
happy and
have.
extremely comfortable with it.
I mean, Rule Cyclopedia, I feel is the if you go from BX to Rule Cyclopedia, you'll find I feel one or two rules that you feel are really like an improvement, and then there's a bunch of stuff that I just tripped over when I was playing it, like the or I tried it twice and then I was like I need to change this. Um, there was one rule, I don't know how they came up with this, but where if you look for a trap and if you fail to remove a trap, that it automatically triggers that trap as you get destroyed. I was like, what the hell is this, right? So you never get out of low levels as a thief. You're always fucked. Um, eh, Little things like that, but it does sort of try to uh, it has assertions beyond BX, goes up to level 14, and gives you barely enough to build a stronghold. And with Rule Cyclopedia, they did try to go all the way. I feel Axe kind of it fulfills that promise. It fixes the proficiency system, which was in Rule Cyclopedia as well, but was very sort of bare bones, not really well thought out, all that stuff.
We'll definitely circle back because I want to talk with you guys each individually about specifics around your adventures, the elements of your high level adventures that you wanted to incorporate for your own specific reasons, right? We touched on it briefly, but I definitely want to go into elements of your of adventures that you definitely wanted in there for your reasons. So we'll circle back on that. But real quick, I do want to go through each of you and kind of talk about why did you want to actually compete in this particular competition? Because I think you guys all have different perspectives around why you wanted. Prince now has identified why he wanted to create the competition to highlight that high level play is absolutely a viable way to play Dungeons and Dragons, which is great. I think the more modes of play, the more styles of play in adventure gaming, the better for everybody. But I'm curious to hear why each of you individually felt inspired.
Okay, can I
Yeah,
talk
there you
first?
go. Please.
Great. So there's two different reasons why I participate in NAP, and um, like I said, it's been going on for 3 years. I've done it every time, and every time I've actually entered a high level AD&D adventure into the contest. So this was actually my third high level AD&D adventure that I'd submitted. The two reasons why I like to do NAP is one, it's a challenge to me as a designer to try to create an adventure that is cool enough for someone to run and play and publish. So it's a personal challenge of my design chops. The other reason is because I really believe in what it is that Prince is doing with his contest and showing how the game can be played without needing to resort to a lot of tricks, gimmicks, and glitz. And I've complained for years that there seems to be a dearth of good adventure writing out there, but it doesn't do much for me to just complain about it without actually throwing my own hat in the ring. So when I write my adventures, I try to write them to show that yes, you can do this. You can do a high level AD&D adventure, and it's functional. And that's why I want to demonstrate that that's the spirit of NAP, and that's the spirit that I embrace when I do it. So those are the two reasons why I participate.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, that you don't need uh trickery or glitz is a good way of saying it. Yeah, that you actually um with the game as is, you have at your disposal just uh yeah, just a fantastic sort of what do you call that? I don't want to use the word toolbox because whenever I see, I hear toolbox in game design, this is just a bunch of crap thrown together. But it is a toolbox in this case, but like a well-oiled machine, right? Something that you can use to uh, create this whole world, right, full of fantastic possibilities. You can create these awesome adventures, and it's like um, your thing is to add to it, right, in a way, and personalize it, but it's not to like to throw it out of you shouldn't throw it out immediately. Okay, you should understand it, should use it, and at some point maybe you know you're ready, right? It's you won't need a lot of it anymore, or you're ready to like build on what's there before. But yeah, there's just like so much great stuff in there. What a good reason.
Excellent. I like this. I like this order. Chomi, you're up.
Well, first of all, I like challenges, and um, actually, I have a few projects I've been working on for a few years now, and I really wanted to focus on these and on my home games for a while now, but I couldn't resist the call. So, as a winner of the first contest, felt I have to enter the ring for a second time.
And when Chomi says that, that's literally true. I have blackmailing material. I watch him, send him letters. I call him. Is it done?
Yes, yes. It's
Oh,
it's it's like Prince says.
oh man,
Yes,
no,
and by the way, and by the way, no. So this high level play is something that has been bugging me for a while now because most of my experience with high level play was with new school systems, to be honest. And I have I my experience was that the gameplay does not really change in new school systems regardless of what level you are playing on. I mean, the typical game session remains the same. The only change is that you are harder to kill and cause more damage with your powers. And yeah, so this is a bit of an oversimplification, but you don't really have the same tiers of play as I think you have in old school games, where the first three levels are survival horror, and from the name level you got to build a stronghold and start wargaming, possibly in parallel with normal adventuring, but it changes gameplay somewhat. And well, possibly you can play a similar game in new school systems as well, and I have tried to push my new school campaigns in that direction, but the mechanics were not really backing this up. So I have a platonic idea of should how it should be in old school games, but I never had the chance before to try this out because my home campaigns never went to that 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 power level. I mean, I was watching the old school Renaissance since its birth, but I was mostly playing and DMing new school systems up to 2018, and that's when I have started my first Swords and Wizardry campaign, and we just never got to these high levels. But I have a vision of it, and and well, this contest has given me the chance to fast forward a little bit and write an adventure module that is what it's from 9th to 13th level, and try if my theories work or not. And well, the playtest went good, so yeah, it got me excited to continue on pushing on and see how it works when we are playing a high level campaign and not just a one off.
Yeah, it felt like a sort of expedition, right? And then I mean that in a like an old school, like with large amounts of like hostile tribes as
Yes.
well, and right, you would have a large groups of mercenaries, and there's a ticking clock, and there were like all these powers in this sort of like lost world type of environment with some technological items, or maybe it was like I believe a crashed starship, if I
Yes, there
recall
is one.
correctly as well.
Yes, that is a
Uh,
trope that I just can't read off. Whenever I am trying to write a sword and sorcery or pulp story genre adventure, I just have to put a crashed spaceship or some laser pistols in it. Yeah, yeah. But yes, my idea of high level play is that um, okay, the player characters will have their own domains and armies, and they start wargaming, I guess. But occasionally they still go on regular adventures, only with against much more powerful enemies. So this was my idea, that they have their domains back home, but if you have a domain and you have an army, uh, why wouldn't you just take those guys with you if you go on an adventure? It makes sense. I mean, the wilderness is a dangerous place. You can encounter, I don't know, giants and whatever in the mountains. So I would take my army with myself if I wanted to go on a dangerous adventure. And well, let's see if I can use those guys, and how I can use those guys in that adventure. I mean, if I am descending into a dungeon, maybe I do not want to take my armies with myself because they would be just cannon fodder. I mean, there are narrow corridors. Why would I take, I don't know, 100 soldier with me? They are going to be massacred. But moving through the wilderness, I guess I can use those guys to protect me against low level enemies like, I don't know, 30d10 orcs or something like that. So yeah, that was my idea. But anyways, I I digress. So yeah, I have felt that this challenge must be answered because of the first reason I wanted to enter another of these snap contests, and because high level adventure is something that has been bugging me for a while.
you have to defend your belt, or
Yeah, yeah.
have one
But
winner.
I failed, but I don't mind.
Well, listen, this was a Herculean task. Okay, there's no shame. But no,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question. Like when you say new school systems, do you mean like third edition or fifth edition?
And even fourth edition, I have to
Oh
admit that I have
no!
been. Yes, 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 yes,
Get this
yes.
man out of here!
No, no, yeah, 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 yes, yes. Uh, I mean, okay. So, long story short, when fourth edition came out, it was for a very short time. Um, it looked to me as an
You
answer
were at a
for
party with Chris Perkins, and you were both very
no,
drunk, and he had
no, no,
pictures,
no,
and he
no.
was like,
It,
"All right,
it is
show
just
me.
that
You're gonna
I was I
play."
was I was hating third edition so much because it was very complicated above, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
sixth or eighth level, that the simplicity of fourth edition. Well, I liked it for about, I don't know, maybe a week or two,
Oh yeah.
but some of my players got hooked on it and
Oh
started
no.
started the campaign. So and I have had a few players who started gaming with fourth edition and they liked it. So I was like, okay, let's play through this campaign, and I have been DMing for I don't know 3 years or 4 years. So yeah,
Held hostage. Very, but still great.
yes,
Apparently, you do a great job. Now, I was going to say that with these, I think with the difference between these new school systems and high level gameplay and high level gameplay in the old school, right, is that I feel in these newer systems, it's almost all combat, and it becomes more combat
yes,
as you advance in editions, right? With fourth or fifth edition, a lot of the utility stuff has been. It's almost like it's been pushed to the background. It's still there, but it's almost like perfunctory. So maybe the combat itself is pretty tactical, but in old school D&D, and this is separate from if you use all of these retainers, which is also a great thing, right? Or you can hire mercenaries, right? You have all this gold. Uh, I feel there's more of a richness in this old school gaming because there's this exploration element. The whole idea that you would reconnoiter a dungeon with, I don't know, like wizard eye, or you use path walls to bypass some sort of terrible danger, or you scry the place, or you scout it with wizard eye, and then you teleport in. All this crazy ass mobility stuff. Um, that's not there so much. I feel in the newer editions, it really does feel like okay, you just have a lot of protection spells and a lot of damaging spells and abilities, and whoever has
yes,
the
yes,
biggest
yes.
mathematical fist is going to prevail.
Yes, that's why I'm telling that the game feels the same at high levels as the game feels at low levels because
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
you are doing more damage, but basically your options are well, yeah, they open up a little bit, but not as much as in old school systems.
All right, very good answer, Commodore. If you'll be so kind.
Well, I'm just shocked that you referenced it briefly, but you didn't introduce Chomi as the actual winner of NAP 1
I
with
did.
webs of
I
past and
alluded
present.
to it. I'm
Yeah, you
assuming
alluded
that
to it.
this is about high level play. These will be
Yeah.
very observant, intelligent, discerning listeners. Really, they'll be able to pick the meaning from my utterance.
Yeah, but webs of past and present, I was just going to say, show me. I have it on the map. I'm waiting for them to hit it. It's one of my favorite modules I've
Great, thank you.
read,
Let me know how
and
it
we'll see if
works.
they bumble into it. Yeah, we'll see when and if they bumble into it.
I've got
But
my copy of it actually right in front of me right now.
Yeah, if we're
so
if we're all
great.
gonna sing praises, I'm gonna jump in and sing praises for Webs because I just ran it last week with Foundry to kind of get a test playthrough before I run it in person in North Texas 2024. And it is phenomenal. Absolutely a
And
phenomenal module. Cannot wait to play it live with a group that's never seen it. So
you guys humble me. Thank you very much.
Well, and you wanted the question of why nap, but that's kind of it. I love nap in general because I think that limitations really help creativity. Um, I love any kind of writing anything that has strong limits on it, requirements basically. In my day job, I'm a systems engineer, and I really like seeing constrained requirements for a lot of these things. I think the art punk problem, not that there's not creativity and not that creativity is fun, but I think a lot of the problem is, they're not looking to sit down with four slightly drunk friends, roll dice, and actually play the game. I think it's pretty important to focus on that. And I think just use what's in the book has been a huge help for a lot of people. Just focusing, it focuses everybody on just play the game. So that's why I entered the last couple. And for No Upfront 3, I was just interested. I mean, I've just generally enjoyed supporting the contest in general, but I also really liked, I really, really enjoyed the high level aspect of it. I got to try out Axe's Domains of War because, at least for me, because I have a sprawling campaign. I play at West Marches style with dozens of players. A lot of them have already started and got not just retainers, but they have, mercenary companies that they own. They have contacts with friendly regiments. They have all these reasons. I mean, there's every good reason for high level players to come in with an army. I'm really curious to see how Shock Top's experience was too, but I love having that as an aspect, and I also love just the scope and scale that you can hit when you fit high level play. You can toss multiple purple worms at people if there's an army. And what I noticed is that as we kind of came on there, there was kind of two modes of play. There's wandering in with an army, and then there's, oh crap, the army's going to get annihilated if we bring a whole bunch of low level guys in here. So we got to do sort of an advanced, more classic exploration with us. I loved watching through both of that. So that's kind of the reason why I did Nap 3. I've just loved all this. I love the creative process and I love the limits.
Yeah, I was sort of blown away by I think the sort of crazy ass uh gigantic apocalyptic, I think is the best term for it. Scale of Cairn of Night. I loved it too. I hope the you'll publish a you'll decide to publish the complete sexier version of it, with some with a little bit of increase in production value, but it's because it's phenomenal work. Um, and yeah, it reminded me of Death Frost Doom, but then turned up to 11 basically. I think what you said about the with this creativity stuff, like with art punk, yes, um I think it's happened before, or it's a trend in not just in game design, but in a lot of like pop culture media, is that um you know something has a certain goal to begin with, but then at some point that goal gets occluded, right? And uh you know if you have game design, but it's no longer focused around people actually playing the game, but it's more about like I don't know whatever, uh, exploring your own creative process or something, and suddenly a lot of the actual hard work you would have to do in order to make something playable, which isn't like fun, right? The creative process itself is usually like, oh, you come up with some cool ideas and you write some impressive or nice passages, and you kind of feel good about yourself, but sort of fine tuning a dungeon or throwing it through an editor and figuring out like, oh shit, I made a mistake here. There's not enough treasure here, or like playing through it, rewriting certain encounters so they flow better. I mean, obviously playing is great, but that sort of the hard work of trying to it's not just enough to have an idea, but you want to implement your idea. You want to sort of translate your idea into the language of the particular game you're writing and running it for. And I feel that sort of stuff was absent for a while, or starting to fade away. Yeah, part of NAP is to sort of refocus that.
Well, the incentive structure for a lot of RPG writing is your audience for writing an adventure module that's actually supposed to be played is a bunch of other DMs. Your audience for writing something that's fun to read is potentially vast. It can be even bigger than players. So there's a lot more potential audience, there's a lot more potential money if you're writing something that's artistic and interesting, a coffee table book, or even just a read through and imagine. But high level also kind of there's not an incentive for high level because really, why not face Death Frost Doom at level? I forget what it was, but it was low,
One
right?
to three.
Yep. Why not do that? Why not have those big apocalyptic things at very low level? Because it's easier for the reader who's reading along and playing along in his head. It's usually easier to imagine at low levels. It's that's why there's that mud core tendency because it's not about playing; it's about reading it.
Yeah, or when you fight God at level 1 or level 2. And I say this, even in what is it? In NAP 2, there's a very good entry. What is it? Of the slumbering Titan, I believe, or something like that. There was one. There was one with a buried Titan monster for levels 1 to 3. But yeah,
Hey, I
all that
sent in one with
complex
a god in it
system
too.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. You had a cabbage god. That's
Yes, a
I
a
remember that
tiny
one. That
petty
was
god of
legitimate, I
cabbage.
feel.
Yes, I feel like level 3, if it's a god of cabbage, that's
Petty
about
god.
right
Yeah.
for your
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's right. All this I guess that's also why I like the format, because it's harder to you can't really fake it. It's very easy, or comparatively easy, for me to see if you're um if you don't know what you're doing, right? Then I can kind of like go, or at least it's easier for me to see, and it's probably also harder to
to just write from your gut, because there's all these factors that you do have to take into account, right? Like all these. With level 1 to 3, you can just come up with a sword and sorcery premise, and you're kind of good to go. And the magic that the players will have will be very limited. It'll be disruptive, but that's kind of the idea. But with these higher level adventures, you really have to. You do have to sort of. It doesn't mean that you have to write everything to specifically counter all of the abilities the players might have, but it does mean that you have to sort of take into account um, some of the options that are available to players. Like, okay, yeah, what if they do show up with whatever 50 guys, or um, what if they turn invisible? What if they scry? All this stuff, right? You have so much more options at your disposal.
Definitely. Anything else before I move on, Commodore, that you wanted to add? Excellent. So, Nick, what inspired you, man, to jump in here, throw your hat in the ring?
Primarily, it was that at that moment when the NAP3 got announced, or NAP3, I was at that moment convincing my players to play AD&D. Or had previously been running a Legend of the Five Rings 4th edition game, and the year before that, it was a 5th edition game. I've been able to shepherd this group into exploring new games. I finally got them to agree to AD&D, and that was when that got announced. And I thought, okay, in addition to now actually running vanilla AD&D as opposed to Swords and Wizardry or Glog or what have you that I ran before, I want to test myself, because I write a blog and I read lots of blogs and I read Prince and I read Bryce, but has that actually led to being able to create a good adventure, not just for play at my table, but for other people to use? Am I able to Bryce Max? Am I able to make something good? Actually, the first time I submitted to a contest, it was Bryce's Wavestone Keep contest, where his response was, "This is nice, but for God's sake, man, give me a few more sentences. It's too short."
Yeah, you have to be the only person in the. Did you maybe have like a single word for every rule? Bryce said, I want more. I want more description.
But I think I've got
Sorry,
the
for
hang of
people
it.
that don't know, right? It's Bryce is 10footpole.org. That's like the largest old school gaming review blog. And like one of these things is that he's always talking about short evocative description and complaining that he has to read too much. So to actually have Bryce sort of shoot down your key when he's like, "There's not enough text." That's very funny to me.
But yeah, just because it was a way to test myself, and likewise, Commodore, I think you mentioned that you were into the constrained space as well. The constrained space, the fact that with a little bit of leeway for monsters and magic and so on, I had to stick to these existing resources and put them together into an interesting way. And I further constrained myself by taking one of these noble houses from D3 and just basically taking that as it was with just a few additions and fleshing all that out. And I have to actually disagree with you, Prince, what you said before about the creative process. That part of the creative process of having written something down and now chopping it apart, remixing it, cutting out extraneous words, figuring out how to harmonize it with the rest of the mechanics. That is the section that I spent a lot of time on because I love doing it. I just pick at it over months until it's all in a nice, lovely shape.
Very good. Um, Oh, that's if you can gain enjoyment from that, I guess sort of like what is it, like you refining it like a samurai sword, and then finally having that moment of like contentment when it hits publication. Uh, that's you're blessed. You're truly blessed. I think rewriting and editing, it's very tempting to sort of do it forever and to get into a point where it's never done. And I find that for myself, it's I I mean I do edit a ton when I handed in Cliff Hive for publication. The big fight with my editor, but I ended up like editing almost all of it, like making all the sentences shorter, like all this like a ton of like extra editing work, which I think was it was good that he bullied me into it. Um, but I find that like at some point you just have to go like, all right, it's done. We gotta move on, right? Before
and then maybe afterwards, subsequently, you add some errata. But I think it's pretty good that you're motivated by that. Do you think that like what I guess I tried with Nap to give people a little bit of a primer with high level gaming because there is some stuff out there. My understanding is also imperfect. I have been playing it for about a year now, and before that, uh, I played in someone else's game where we were all level 14 plus. Um, but do you think it helped from what you could see?
I think it did, though I was constraining myself more to the D series, so I don't think I was thinking as much in those terms.
All right, pretty good. Yeah, I love the idea. I'm a big fan of the D series. I think it's great work. And but when I checked out your submission, I was like, this is this crazy? Is he actually gonna pull it off? This man has written a D4, and is it going to be hubris, or does he actually get it? And it felt very sort of like genuine. So that's great. Yeah,
And I have to
I thought it
note
was a
there,
great game.
JB, when you commented on that, you were talking about how the D series is the choice because everyone's already read it 100 times to understand it. But I think I first read the D series, especially D3, right after Prince did his review of it. I'm pretty sure the youngest person in this group here. I'm really overwhelmingly new to old school play. And so I was coming into D3 fresh and having to reset my mind from the drow are Greenwood's kind of sadomasochist dominatrices to no, they're Melnibonean elves plus the Imperial Chinese bureaucracy.
I'm sorry. I think you had a. Did you have a question for me? I'm
No,
sorry.
just two. No, sorry, to your
Sharing
point.
experiences, JB.
Oh, shared
Jeez.
experiences. I
As a fellow
The
apologize.
D&D enthusiast.
I'm
the
sorry.
distinction between sort of you were coming to this from the position of someone who's who's known D3 and who's read D3 many times versus me coming into it with fresh eyes.
Nice.
I get. I'm sorry. I don't know what I expected to say.
No,
Ran
I
into
can.
a
No,
wall of
nothing.
force.
yeah, that's fine. No,
I
that's fine. No,
apologize.
I think you're fine. I think it was fine. Do you have any opinions on the D series? I believe is where.
Oh, do I have opinions on the D series? Okay. Um. Yes, but I do have opinions on the D series. But I was going to kind of wanted to get through everyone talking about why they did nap before I talked about my experiences with high level play.
Yeah, we
Which
know that's
would
perfect. Well, let's save that. That's a good one. Well, that's perfect. Let's
yeah.
save that.
Sorry
I
about
did,
that.
and then Nick, I want to give you the last word before we move on to shock. But this is gonna be fun. I've got a little sidebar that you brought up. So, but I want to give you the last word. Is there anything else you want to talk about for inspiration for you and Nap 3?
By all means, go on.
Okay. So our next individual is in fact the person that inspired the Wavestone Keep competition because he is the author of Wavestone Keep.
Yes, that is true. And the only reason I participate in NAP is because I have a massive chip on my shoulder for being made fun of by Bryce once.
Oh
So,
no.
I love it so much. I love it so
Is
much.
it true that he hosted his Wavestone Keep competition and he had everybody did they have to use your map or just the title of your adventure and then he
they
challenged them to write a
the
better
stipulation
adventure?
was it needed to be 9 rooms and only 2 pages plus a map, I think.
Yeah.
And other than that, they were good. I actually did when I found out about the contest much later. I did submit an entry to it that was late, and I was upgraded from a complete and utter trash fire to meh. So huge improvement.
No, that's truly Bryce Maxine right there. Well done. Well done.
He lifted his just the death mark was lifted, but you're still, the royal disdain.
But yeah, you said Nick that you're probably the youngest guy here. I doubt that. I've only been in the OSR scene for maybe 4 years at this point, and Wavestone Keep was the first time I had ever tried to publish anything. and it was rightfully mocked because it was garbage. That's all. That is true. But I didn't even know Bryce had found it until I was reading Prince's blog during NAP1, I think, and it was somebody mentioned it, the contest, and I went back and found out about Bryce's blog because I didn't even know he existed at the time. So it had just been happening, not even being on my radar for months.
I can just imagine. I saw it recently with another adventure review of like a village on the borderlands or something. Just I imagine these innocent module authors that don't know that Bryce exists, and then you put out your little put out your adventure. Oh, how nice, how sweet, and then yeah, as you say, months later. You get that link and you go there and he's dropping f bombs in the comments. He's telling you to die. Like he's calling your work absolute shit. He's starting competition. It's like it must be quite the experience for you.
It definitely was. It was a kick in the nuts is really what it was. Like because I was young and innocent and bright-eyed. I was like, I'm going to be the best designer who's ever lived, and Bryce really showed me where I actually was at the time. But the main reason I like the NAP contest is like others have said, it's a good way to prove and to challenge myself and keep improving. Like I went from not even placing in NAP2 to placing this year, and I'm very excited about that. And it I really got to learn a lot about Axe writing this adventure. Like I know way more about the Adventure Conquer King system than I did before I started writing.
Oh yeah. Did you do
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall. Did you do Temple of Fire for Nap 2?
Yes, Temple of the Flame Lord,
Oh yeah,
the
Temple of the Flame
giant.
Lord.
Yep.
Yeah, I recall that it was like there was definitely some good stuff in there. There were just other adventures there that were stronger, but yeah, I mean for Nap 3, this is um especially for somebody. I have a special chip on my shoulder about introductory adventures, which are actually you would think that they're easy to write, but they're actually I feel almost like harder to write because um what you're making something and you're intending this to be the first experience that people have with a certain type of gameplay, right? So if the quality should actually be higher. There's an adventure for the OSR, which I think is Tomb of the Serpent King? I want to say it's something like that. I hate that one, right? Because and if it was just a random throwaway adventure, I probably would not have cared. Like I would have said, okay, whatever, average, moving on. But here, it's the idea is that it's a that this is the introductory adventure. Now you teach your fellow players what old school gaming is all about, and then it's like you get it wrong, right? That's just a kick in the nut. But that didn't happen uh, uh, with Frostworm Keep, I believe it was. It was just a good introductory domain play adventure. So it was oh sorry, the Taking of Iceworm Hold. My apologies. It was
It's okay.
it was a
It
good
went through.
it was just a good setup. Like all the elements were there. It didn't feel rushed or underdeveloped or something like that. Yeah, it was just it was great, and it's also awesome to see like how much you've sort of yeah, just how much your design chops have grown in between two competitions. So that's great.
I have to note here before we move on, Prince, that Tomb of the Serpent Kings was the first module I ever ran with an old school system.
There we are, the roots. Did you have a good time?
I had a good time. This was definitely before my flowering as a GM, and we went from having 7 players in session 1 to like 2 in session 2.
Oh, perhaps my hatred is vindicated. Very good.
Well, the dirty secret for every reviewer is that playing D&D is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to play with a bunch of people, everybody's willing to just experiment and have fun, they're probably going to have a good time at the table.
I mean, we've
That's
been
something
doing
we all have
something
to
like
keep in
that,
mind.
right? With the with my Wednesday, I've been playing with Commodore and a few other random guys
Well, I
on and
said
off
most
on
of the time.
Wednesday. Yeah. and I've been dragging them through, whatever 3-star review adventures I can scramble together. Sometimes like below that, and yeah, it's still just a good time, of course.
Yeah, this goes back to Commodore, your comment on just play. That's the ultimate litmus test for me is does somebody play the game? Obviously we promote that. Like play the game, have fun. Like get it together with your friends, enjoy your time. We like to get a little more deeper and more what we'll call it serious, right? We take our hobby a little more serious. We want to run the best games we can, I would say, for especially this group here. If you're creating this type of content at your guys' levels, you're trying to play an above average game, I would imagine, right? You're trying to hone your craft. But even that being said, it doesn't you're the main reason you're doing it is because you enjoy playing the game. And the more that you see individuals actually enjoying themselves at the table, and that's the whole purpose for their creative output is to enjoy themselves and the people that play with them and everyone's having a good time at the table. I think the more successful you're going to be. So if we haven't already underlined it enough throughout all these episodes and this particular one too, get out there and play some Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that'll solve a whole lot of problems.
Yeah, if it's no fun when your players attack a lair of bandits, if you're not having fun, then something is going wrong. That's for sure.
That's for sure. So bringing this back around as we talked about before, though, Shock Top, anything else you want to add as far as your inspiration for the? Don't feel like you have to, but just want to make sure you get the last word in here.
No, I think I said my piece.
Excellent, excellent. I just love the fact that you did very well in Nap 3, which is like, this is high level adventure, and it takes a lot, definitely a lot more effort. Number one, I would say of all the nap contests, just because there's so many elements to it, and we're going to get into that right now. But for you to place in a high level adventure contest, and also your first one, the first adventure you ever released being Wavestone Keep, I love it. I love everything about that. So just want to say that it's so awesome.
It is my village or my villain origin story. I am the Wavestone Keep guy forever now, and I'm going to make it my whole personality and annoy people. So just be ready.
So great. No, I find it fantastic in every way. Seriously, it's such a great arc. Even though we don't like arcs in this. But anyway, so back to Black Razor. Let's talk about and we'll open this up. We'll start with Black Razor. JB, what were the things that, for you inspired you to want to get into high level games, and specifically for you, what separates high level play from any other modes of play or levels of play? Obviously the numbers, but just specifically for you, what separates high level play?
Okay. Um, this might be a little long-winded, but I'll do my best to be curt. Um, High level play. Let me just. I'll talk. I want to talk about my experience with high level play a little bit. So I'm probably the oldest person here in the chat. I started playing the game back around 81 or 82. So long ago, I can't remember the exact year I started. But once once I started playing, my friends and I were playing with the basic box, what we would call BX, and we played for a number of years before we even discovered there was such a thing as Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But we were playing with BX, and then maybe the addition of the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master's Guide, most of which we didn't understand because we didn't realize they were two separate game systems. And the way you play D&D when you're a kid is you make dungeons and you send people through them, and the more content you have, uh, the more you enjoy it. You're not when you first start playing, if you're a kid, you're not trying to world build. You're just trying to play all the stuff that you see in the game. You see there's a flaming sword. Ooh, I should put that in my dungeon. Ooh, an eight-headed hydra. Let's throw that in there. And so you're trying to give players the treasure that they need to advance in levels so that it opens up more content, to use kind of video game terminology. You want to open content for your players because that way you get to explore all the content that you see in the game. What you see in the game is what fires up your imagination, or what did for my friends and I in the early to mid 80s. And what AD&D has in it, which is different from some other editions, is that it has a game that's scaled to last for a long, long term, from low levels to high levels. When OD&D was first published, you'll look at the level tables in there and you see that things only go up to about level 10 or 11, I think, for the character classes. But because there wasn't an assumption that play was going to go on much farther than when people were able to purchase castles. You'd get your castle and then you'd get back to wargaming because the people who designed original D&D were all wargamers. So you just need to get to the part where you become a lord and then you can start running campaign skirmishes with the lords next door. But you see almost immediately that people wanted to continue play beyond that because it was fun. And so then you have the Greyhawk supplement come out, which has more extensive monster lists, higher levels, higher spells, better treasures. And then every supplement that added on to that after that was just increasing that content. Adding artifacts and relics, adding psionics, adding supernatural demons and astral travel with eldritch wizardry. And of course, you have the gods, demigods, and heroes book. So when AD&D comes out, Gygax had published a game that was designed to last for an extended period of time. And the monsters in the monster manual and the treasure that's in the Dungeon Master's Guide and the spells that are in the player's handbook reflect that. The fact that you have spell levels that go up to 9th or 7th, depending on the type of spellcaster, that there are monsters that are incredibly difficult for even a high level character to defeat, like demon princes or Tiamat or what have you. The advanced Dungeons and Dragons system is designed to have play progress for long periods of time. And so my friends and I, that's what we did. We kept opening up content, and when we finally discovered around the age of 12 or 11 that AD&D was a thing, we junked all our basic stuff and went to AD&D and started over with first level characters and ran the game to see where it would take us. And over time, that's what happens. You start world building, you start creating, and your characters start living in that world. And as they advance, they open more content and see more things and get to do more things. And then the game takes over. It provides a life of its own. It feeds your imagination. It makes you want to continue to play and see what you can do. Everything that follows is just kind of logical progression once you do that. So, uh, going to where I am now as an older adult who generally runs campaigns for kids, I focus more on the world building and just making sure that I have the content in my world that will allow people to progress and open new content. I think that some of the issues with um, modern day or 21st century adventure design is that people haven't ever given the game a chance to play and see organic growth. People don't give their game a chance to breathe and grow from the ground up. And they see that content of high level drow antagonists or demonesses like Lolth or Demogorgon or Orcus or whatever, and they say, "Ooh, I want to put that in my game. I want to put that in my adventure so that the players can experience it." But they don't do the organic growth where that's the natural progression to come to that, which has been my experience of play. That's how my game developed when I was a youth, and that's I've seen how that develops over time when played extensively. It's unfortunate, perhaps, that as adults with busy lives, we don't have a chance to sit down and play as much as we did when we were younger. But if you've already gone down the road like I have of playing for 40 years, you've already decided this is just something I do as a pastime, as a hobby, and there's no real pressure to hurry up and get to the good stuff. pressure is just to make sure the good stuff is in your game, run the game as well as you can, and the good stuff will appear. So, when I set out to when I went to create the adventure or any of the NAP adventures that I submitted, all I was doing was basically just looking at something that would be appropriate to characters what would be an adventure scenario that was appropriate to characters of a certain level of experience, a high level of experience. Um, you folks asked me about my opinion of the D series, and the D series is great. It's just the beginning of high level play, really. Eighth level and ninth level is just the start of high level play. High level play really starts around level 12, thereabouts, when you have access to multiple copies of fifth level spells if you're a wizard, the ability to raise dead multiple times, things that allow you to extend the resources of your adventuring party. And the D series does a great job of showcasing how that works because you have to be able to extend the life of your party when you are underground and away from normal civilization. And you have to be able to find allies in the Underdark, whether it's the Sverfneblin or the Drow. If you can find allies within the city of the Drow, if you can talk your way past the Kuotoa without trying to fight every single one of them in D2, there are the D series showcases what that even at high levels in AD&D play, characters are not out of the woods, they're not invulnerable, they're not immortal. You can have an armor class that's in the negative numbers and you can still get killed. You can still fail a saving throw versus poison. The game scales very well, but it shows how you can extend the party's resources because of their high level. They can go on extensive forays or exploration jaunts underground and not be worried about running out of arrows. Um, I've played through those adventures a bit. I've run them a bit for people. Um, one of my favorite adventures that I've run is Q1, which I know doesn't get a lot of credit from people, but it is an it's I can say now with my adult eyes that there are things that I would definitely change about it. It provides a scope of adventure that is very much high level play and that you are out on a limb on another plane of existence and you have to have high level characters that can have their resources extended into that other dimension, not just several miles underground and away from safe havens, but now you're on a different plane of existence where your spells don't even function the way they normally would if you were on the prime material plane. So those experiences
Wait,
playing
JP,
through the
quick question in between.
yeah, sure.
About Q1. Um,
Yeah,
what did you think? Like, what did you like best about Q1? Because there is cool stuff in Q1. Okay, I'm just curious.
that's hard to say, Prince.
Mhm.
It's hard to say one thing because here's the thing. I don't, and I've said this before. I think on the Discord chat. When I'm writing adventures or running adventures for that matter, I am not worried about memorable encounters or creating memorable encounters. Um, because encounters, what's memorable is how the play of the game works out. You want to keep your players in the moment at all times, so that they feel like they're really there. Then they feel the stress of the game that they're playing. You want them to be afraid for their lives. You want them to be celebratory when it comes to their victories. You want them to feel bad for their friends who just got turned to stone or diseased or whatever. You want them to have that experience. That's the that's the great thing about D&D play is that it's an experiential experience. And so there aren't any particularly special encounters in
No, not at
Q1.
the encounter level, right? But like it has uh I guess you could divided
I
into
think
like sections, right? There's the sort of like Mobius strip type of maze in the
I think
beginning
the
with all the
web is great.
doorways. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
think
The,
the
the
web
web itself.
I think the web itself is great. I think that the ambition of it is great. I think that the different doorways to other dimensions, which basically allows worlds within worlds in the adventure module, are great. Um, and I think that I think Lolth is a great villain. I think that Driders are probably one of my favorite monsters of all time. Uh, yeah, that's those things stand out to me. But it's more the gameplay itself and the screaming faces trapped in the web that's woven from souls and the abyss. That's all cool stuff. Uh anyway, so yeah, it's great, but you don't, that's not the end result of high level play. It's not like, "Ooh, I get to 14th level and then I go play Dream House of the Nether Prince by Anthony Huso." No, it's just that when your characters are at the 14th level, those kind of adventures become more feasible. Now adventures like a Paladin in Hell, which I've never played, but I understand it's written you're going to hell and looking for a paladin or something like that. That's a second edition thing I don't get into. But that kind of adventure becomes feasible to higher level characters with their resources that is not available to lesser people, to lesser characters. Um, and so you have to grow your campaign so that it reaches that. And if you can do that, if you do that, then you can see the full glory of what the game has to offer. I One of the reasons why I enjoy being a dungeon master is I enjoy the creative process of it, right? So creating with that content is something I like. And while yes, it's fun to see the players experience that, um, it's more the act of creation than just running the game that leads me to be the dungeon master. It's not just about the narcissism of being a master over other players who are beholden to you. It's the joy of creating some fantastic scenarios. And high level play opens up the whole gamut of what you can do. All the kid gloves come off. You don't have to worry about the fact that the characters can't turn stone back to flesh. You don't have to worry about them being able to neutralize poison or cure disease. You don't even have to worry about them getting killed or level drained because you have high level clerics that can bring them back or reincarnate them or what have you. So
All right.
everything becomes a different challenge.
Well spoken. That was a good comprehensive answer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chomi, what for you separates high level play from everything else?
Well, I think I will be a tad bit shorter than JB. My
Apologies.
Okay, so in my opinion, high level play is different in obviously that the player characters have much more power, and that actually they are becoming through this power the masters of the game setting, because the power that they have acquired, yes, actually. um Opened up their options to alter and influence that setting. So this is the part where the dungeon master's dreams and plans of his beautiful background setting for his stories splinters into a million shattered pieces, and rightly so. So this is where Madcore ends, and the player characters are not actually competing anymore for survival against the setting, but taking it up, making the sandbox their own, and either destroy it or build something out of it. So this is what I see as the end game of D&D. Because well, okay, so at first they are starting the wargaming part of the game. They are gaining their domains, and they are going to lead their armies on campaigns against opposing forces, but they have the option to conquer the whole world, in my opinion, because they will attain such high levels that normal mundane people will not be able to stand against them anymore, at some point at least. So while I think that besides this campaign aspect of the game, they are still adventuring, but they will go against demons and demigods and kings and other um, epic level enemies, and their decisions are going to affect crowds of people. And this is the part where I think that they can really take the wheel of the campaign and decide what to do with it. Up to this point, they were struggling against the setting, and this is the part where they are making the setting their own. And this is the part where I think that the referee is becoming the one who is enduring the game against the players. And up to this point, the players were struggling against all the challenges that the referee has thrown against them. Okay, I know this is a little radical approach, but as the referee is going to stay the referee, and he can throw anything against the players. But I think that this is the most obvious distinction between the low level play and the high level play. That finally the player characters attained the level of masters of the game setting.
Love the conciseness, masters of the game setting. I think that also speaks to the organic growth that JB was talking about too, like the setting overall. And we'll get into that, I think, as we move along here with the questions. But next up, Commodore, same question, sir.
Yeah, riffing on the same thing, the big appeal to high level gaming is the fact that the players have ownership at a certain point. You know, you can either do it with armies or you can do it with keeps, you can do it with towers. Players want to own stuff. Even with newer school games, there's a lot more helplessness they have early on, and later on, a high level. I've played plenty of new school stuff too. Quite enjoy it actually, but a high level Pathfinder player is a very different beast from the low level version of it. Has a lot more control over what the world is. And so there's a real appeal there. I do like what Shomi said about how the game master is he's sort of defending himself at a certain point. And I think a really important thing is to just let it happen in a lot of cases. It's good for them to have victories. We're used to them starting out in mud core zone. They barely survive every single thing you throw at them. They are just sort of bumbling from one place to another. If they survive the session, good for them. There's gonna be a point where if they have the right planning, if they have the right divination, if they have the right teleportation, if they have the right hirelings, if they have the right everything, then they should be able to kind of have a cakewalk in a lot of cases. And that's not a bad thing at all. That's something that should be encouraged. A good plan is great. But at the same time, that means, if they have sort of leveled up their play experience, that means you can also go a little crazy, which is also kind of fun. You can have lurking in the bottom of your world a dozen dragons. You can have big old masses of horror. You don't have to do artificial things for 1 to 3 to have the end of the world. You can have literally something that will have end of the world consequences, and that's fair. And I think the challenge for a game designer at all levels of play is you should usually be able to get the players to say, "Oh crap, that was our fault," whenever they die. Sometimes it won't happen, but usually when I kill characters, I've never killed a player yet. Whenever I kill characters, usually they're saying, "Well, crap, I should have done this. We should have done that." But at high level play, there's a lot more levels to it. And you do have to kind of realize that sometimes high level game players are just not going to enjoy themselves. Some players really enjoyed the low levels, and when they get to the high levels, they just get a little overwhelmed. Particularly, I've particularly noticed for some of the spellcasters, there was a guy, one of our guys was, he was really excited to start out as a magic user, and after about a session, he says, "Could I instead play a fighter?" which is perfectly fair.
Did you start him off on ninth or 12th level magic user? And had he never done
Yes.
it before?
He had done magic users before. He
Mhm.
was familiar with magic users in general, but his highest level before had been 6. So, which has some options, but there's a lot more the higher you get.
Yeah, I think um, that that was also part uh, of the challenge, I guess, of the competition. That in there's a huge difference between how you would um, play if you had reached that higher level through a continuous campaign, right? Because then it's uh, you have a great deal of tools at your disposal, but these tools are gradually introduced to you, and you kind of have time to experiment with each new kind of like what is it, weapon or tool that's added to your arsenal as you progress in levels, right? And also like I feel even the opposition you face is sort of like phased. Certain monsters get shifted in, others quietly get shifted out. But there's a sort of transition there that allows you to get used to it. Every new magic item that you find, you have some time to integrate that into your routine. When I first played what is it, Dream House of the Nether Prince under under the Cauldron Con organizer Settembrini with a bunch of new players, I was just given a 14th level magic or 15th level magic user with a ton of items, and then it was just basically like, okay, you've got a week to prepare, hit the book, discuss strategy, and then the super killer adventure starts. It's also fun, but I can see how that would be an experience that not everyone enjoyed. And with Slith Hive at Cauldron, I kind of did the same actually. I said, listen, you have um you've got I think between 5 and 10 minutes to study your giant ass character sheet with all these magic items and abilities, and ask me whatever questions you want. You can look things up, but then we're gonna start the game. But that's I think in normal high level play it would not be quite that drastic, and even players that wouldn't enjoy that would probably be able to get accommodated to it.
I was going to say one thing that kind of is interesting in terms of practicing for high level running and playing high level. Sci-fi games tend to have the feeling of high level D&D almost at the outset. Usually, you're going to be starting out with a spaceship, that can go to different star. I mean, that kind of magic is way high level for D&D. But usually, everybody has a spaceship when they start. Their crew, they themselves are usually very fragile, and if it's a proper system, then they'll be extremely fragile. But even then, there is a lot of very
Gadgets.
powerful
If you're thinking
abilities. Yeah,
about
gadgets.
your are you talking about Stars Without Numbers or Without
I've run
Number?
Stars Out Numbers, but I've done quite a few.
Yeah, man.
I mean,
I played it for 2 years. Yeah. Well,
right,
continue, please. You're running it. Yes, I agree. It does feel like you're playing high level D&D with all the crazy gadgets that you can buy.
right, and it goes for I think most sci-fi systems will have that even at level 1, just because, I mean, you can go anywhere in the world, you can do anything. You have a huge amount of power that comes from that, and so I think it's actually good practice, kind of both ways. It's good practice for running sci-fi games to have high level D&D. It certainly helped my running. On the other side, it helped that I had some sci-fi experience when I first started poking my way around playing and then running high level and D&D derivatives.
Excellent. Moving on. Nick, what do you got for us?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to be repetitive and also concur with Chomi that given my very low degree of experience with high level play, it seems to me the reason to do it, the appeal is that at those high levels, possible space of action has increased to the point that players have a great deal of freedom and a great deal of power to impact the world as they see fit. Almost to the point that if you're playing at high level, you basically have to be running a game where players are more proactive and coming up with their own objectives. And I don't know if it was Commodore or Chomi who said this, that they are now the threat that the dungeon master is dealing with and not the other way around. Otherwise, if you're still playing at high levels with, going to the in and getting a quest from the notice board, except now you're fighting dragons and Tiamat instead of goblins. What's the point? Why not just repeat low-level games over and over and over again?
My players actually now have started putting out notice boards in the inns that they own.
Excellent.
That sounds wonderful. Really, I wish to see that in my
Outsourcing
campaigns
it.
at some point. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I mean, that's the benefit of having an open. That's kind of its own side thing, but that's the nice thing about having an open table because I actually do have this campaign has a lot of level difference. They are benefactors and quest givers to the lower guys in a lot of cases, which is really fun.
Yeah, I think uh, it's a good point that that Nick made. That like if you because your players can um, have so much option and can have a lot more mobility. I guess it's also a little bit more demanding on the DM because you do have to make your run your game in a way so that it can accommodate players going what is it outside of the reservation off the rails basically. uh, if your players strike out and do something right that you have to be able to accommodate that. um, at the same time I can also see that if you're at some point you're going to be reaching such a level that you require such a great amount of experience that not every single target is going to be as appealing, right? So if there's a bunch of whatever orcs or bandits in some area, you might be able to cut through it in half a second, but then the potential payoff is not not going to be worth it. You're going to be either doing domain stuff or you're really going to be consulting with sages or otherwise trying to find like I guess a mountain to climb. You're going to try to find a target that's worthy of your attention. At least in some groups, I'm sure that there's other um, players who would be perfectly content to, you know, continue obliterating with with increasing efficiency just the various monster layers scattered around the campaign map.
Yeah, I think that actually some players are more a reactive type, and not every player enjoys taking the wheel. Some of the players just want to enjoy the ride on the back seat. So it
Sure.
is good that if you have at least one or two active players in your group who are inventive and try to engage with the setting and do their own thing, and the rest of the players can just follow them along.
Yeah, it's echoes of the same thing. I think high level play is when you're freed from mudcore, as it were. You no longer have to worry about going into some horrible, awful or cold and getting killed because you breathe the wrong air or something like that. But I think I further extend that personally in thinking that high level characters generally don't go into dungeons unless whatever's in that dungeon is a personal threat to the realm or world. So you go from a lot of short stake or small stakes dangerous adventures to long periods of time between much more dangerous locations and threats that the high level characters are interested in, and you fill in those gaps with your more war gamey or domain management type problems.
That's a pretty good uh, observation. I know that Anthony Huso, I think, described something similar on his blog and his writing. That i- in his campaign, right, the characters they would have a large amount of downtime during which they would either be politicking or crafting magic items or that sort of stuff, and then in between the players would have, I think, a stable of characters. So there would be also like mid-level or low-level adventures going on, and then every once in a while, right, something really truly like interesting or dangerous or lucrative would come along, and then they go all in. So payoff is huge. You would advance relatively quickly. You would probably, if you would tackle an adventure like that, there would definitely be enough gold to advance you further. There would be great magic items there. But also, you all go all in. It would be very dangerous indeed. And that's kind of
Yeah,
like how he played it out.
that's one of the things that I'm running a game right now where we're kind of experimenting with multi-level stable play where each of my players has a ninth level, or now one of them's already reached 14th level because the game's been going a while. Character, and then a
Yeah.
few fifth or sixth level characters, and then a bunch of schmucks that they can send anywhere. And what you find is that like the Baron of your barony or your Duke does not go out and handle every single goblin incursion on his own because they're not threatening to him and there's not very lucrative, but it's still dangerous enough that he's risking his life. But he has underlings to do that. And you could just have your players play those underlings if they're interested in that sort of mudcore style of play for that evening or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's still. I mean, yeah, like the low level orc stuff is still like really fun to me as well. But just the extra spice of high level play. It's like such a great format to fool around in for sure. I mean, and there's always I guess that's why they invented cloud kill to kind of like signal to the players like, all right, you don't need to bother with these guys anymore. Just drop one in and wait, and then okay, they'll all be destroyed.
Well, if I could just say a couple things. There are two ways to incentivize high level player characters to go on adventures. There's player incentive, player generated incentive, and DM generated incentive. And for players, over time, if you're growing your campaign organically, they're going to find things that they care about, and that will drive um, conflict and drama in the game. If they have a beef with a particular NPC, then they might go to war with them or something. Okay. That's stuff that's largely outside of the dungeon master's control. Players will figure out whatever cause it is that they want to champion, and that will incentivize them to action. Then there's player in the other type of player initiated incentive is the ones that are game oriented. Like, I want to create a new magic spell, or I want to create a new magic item, or I want to expand my barony. These things are game oriented or game mechanic oriented incentives that work for high level play. But not every player is a self starter who wants to do those things. So then the majority of incentivizing comes from the dungeon master. And for the dungeon master, it's a matter of dangling hooks that are going to appeal to the player. And it can't, in my opinion, it can't always be, oh no, another world threatening
The world is
Armageddon
going
that
to get
needs to be
destroyed.
stopped, or another
Yeah.
demigod that's coming down from on high to destroy us if we don't defeat this creature or whatever. You have to have, and so because of the high amount of experience points that they need, you have to find treasure for them to look for. That's the main objective. And then when you're creating high level adventures, you think, okay, if I need a giant amount of treasure, where would such a treasure be that would not be easily accessible? Someone else hasn't already taken it.
So
And
you
then
put
you
it in the
can
plains, right? Or
you
like,
can put in
yeah,
the
you can put it in
plain.
other places as well. Yeah, but
If it's in the middle of a desert that, takes 3 weeks to cross, um, with no road, it's gonna be really hard for adventurers to get there without putting together a caravan of camels and drivers and men, and then provisioning all those people to get across there in the elements. I mean, you can put things in out of the way locations, like, Hell's Own Temple being on an island in the middle of an ocean,
oh yeah.
and things like that. You have to I'm sorry, I'm referencing that earlier adventure that I wrote. But, you can put things in out of the way places, or things that are guarded by incredibly difficult monsters or beasts, that no one can get to that treasure because it's just too dangerous for anyone of lesser level. That is the way to incentivize players to continue playing at high levels. You have to think in those terms for the players who are not self-starters.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, I
pretty
just
good.
wanted to add that.
Oh, no. That's a great addition. And for I was actually pleasantly surprised that I think none of the finalists had a world destroying. Sorry, none of the contest winners I think had a world destroying hook. I'm trying to dig dig through my memory to see if I maybe missed one. I do remember that there was one which was a pretty cool adventure, but it was just it was for level 7 to 9, I think, for BX. It was a great. I think it would have been a great mid-level adventure. Um, Not quite what I was looking for with Nap, but it did have the hook that if you didn't interrupt like the vampire that was in the lair, that he would have triggered some sort of ritual that fucked the entire planet up, and it felt very much out of place. Good point, I think, about um, considering also where you would locate an adventure, right, of a high level scale without um, you know, in a way that it makes sense and is congruent uh, you know, with the rest of the game world. And yes, you would logically put it in a remote location. And I would even say that um, if it's guarded by powerful monsters, then presumably if those monsters are inimical enough, they would also be, civilization would kind of like stay away from them. But I guess you could conceive of a scenario where if the guardians are reasonably amicable, you could just put them, I don't know, in the middle of a or below a town, and if they just keep to themselves, you won't have that problem. Oh,
Sure,
great
and
point.
it can be. I mean, you say, "Oh, well," the players say, "This is okay. Why have we never heard of this particular adventure before now?" Well, that's part of the reason why it's available is because it was unknown or largely unknown, and now we've just discovered that, oh, it wasn't a legend after all. There's this
Yeah,
place to go
for
to.
example.
Mhm.
For sure. Yeah, or you find an old reference, or like I mean, there's so many different ways to sort of like introduce something in a way that isn't totally hackneyed. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So in the interest of time, because we're getting on with the podcast here in about a couple hours, I'm going
Oh
to open
yeah.
up kind of the last of the questions here to the group, and you guys just answer them as you see fit instead of having everybody going down the row. But I would say that the first, and we're kind of piggybacking off of the discussion already, works perfectly. So we've talked about elements of a campaign that facilitate, players engaging at a high level or wanting to get to high level or opening up high level types game modes. What other areas and mechanics or modes have you guys found successful in your campaigns to really encourage that? I mean, another beautiful example you guys talked about mechanically is a stable of characters, right? Anything of that nature, would love to hear from you guys what you've been successful with.
Well, I think the easiest way to get players motivated to do anything is to take something away from them. Um, the pettier, the better. So, like in the game I was just talking about, they went and tried to the mid level characters are trying to found their first stronghold in a place, right? And they were out there the first couple of nights, and I was rolling wilderness encounters, and they were attacked by some tribal warriors who were very easily able to repel them from that hex that they wanted. That was like their perfect dream hex that they had traveled months to find. And now they are really, really motivated at removing those tribal warriors with any abilities that they can find or scrounge together. And we've gotten a lot of good sessions out of that. So I think you can extend that with high level play and just say, hey, if you don't want to interact with any of the high level mechanics, you're going to start losing some of those abilities that you've had because players really don't like losing stuff.
I mean, kind of bouncing off that, give them ownership of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And if they wanna have things that they own, then that's something that's also under threat. And you don't have to be a jerk about it either. You can just say, "Here's a chance of getting your own town." Um, my players who have founded a town right on top of the Cairn of Night are not necessarily aware that there's a chance they could unleash an undead army, but there's absolutely a chance as they're mucking around there right now that they could unleash an undead army. They are currently building walls just because it's fun, but uh, here in a few months that might actually happen based on what they're adventuring with. The last fairly high level dungeon delve we had was a smaller side dungeon where one of the players had lost his like handcrafted spear. Like he had an incredibly powerful spear that he had crafted from, and there was a long backstory for basically how he had gotten this really good magic item, and he lost it in a fight, and he knew that the bad guy there was holding on to that spear. So his entire motivation for pushing into this very dangerous little dungeon was we got to get back that spear. That kind of motivation is great for high level.
Yeah, to just go back to what you said at the beginning there, Commodore. I think that in getting players engaged with the campaign such that they want to continue playing in it means giving them chances to impact the campaign and impact the setting in permanent or semi-permanent ways. Gives them part ownership in the campaign if they own a town, as you suggested, or if they have a fief, or they have retainers, or they have titles, and people who pay them respect. Players will eat that stuff up in a way that all the imaginary coins in the world is not going to keep them engaged. But if they have a town that considers them the heroes of that town or whatever, they have something. If they are impacting the world and actually changing the setting around them, that will keep them engaged in the campaign. And then what was said earlier about taking things away, if you've created something or taken ownership of something, then you have something to lose. And even the threat of that loss, not necessarily just taking it away, but the threat of the loss can incentivize action, as can hooks dangled to improve those assets that they've created for themselves. And those become, you see more and more of that as they gain higher levels.
Yes, I don't really have many things to add to it, but my experience is the same, especially in multicore style campaigns. The players expect everybody to be a jerk face with them, and that they will have to struggle for each little step of success they can achieve. But if some part of the campaign world, some NPCs, some people behave humane with them, and they are kind to them, and sympathize with them and respect them, and then these people got endangered by something, the players will get very motivated to save them, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I in one of my earlier campaigns, earliest campaigns in my teens, early teens, we met the arch druid or the great druid, whatever the 14th level druid is. And he was a nice little hermit guy living out in the forest who just wanted to be left alone for the most part, but he would be helpful to us every time we passed by, and we'd swap stories with him. I'm talking about the player characters. And then, if something were to happen to him, if he were threatened or if he disappeared, well, that would be motivation for us because this NPC had actually been very helpful and respectful to us. Those kind of things players will latch onto, and then it makes the whole environment more real to them. It makes them want to continue playing, which is what leads to high level play organically.
I have an addition if no one else uh, wants to jump in.
Take it on. Go for it, Prince.
Thanks. Yes. I was going to say, I love all of your reasons. Very good. Like what motivates players. Um, there's one that I didn't hear, and I think it's for high level play. It's actually kind of important because you can do it in a way that's not forced. You can make things that are cool or like genuinely feel epic in a way. You can. This is like the sort of enchanting thing about it, right? Finally, you have all these sort of monsters or threats that you see in the monster manual that maybe your players they know about them. They're like, oh man, it's like sick, but they've only read about it in a you know
in a monster manual, or they heard about it in the game world, and now you can finally actually, you can pull out the big gun. You can put something against them that's like genuinely, um both in the context of the game and just outside of the context of the game, like genuinely awe-inspiring or formidable or cool. And if your players have any sense of like sort of, if they have that you know if they share that feeling, then of course they'll be motivated. Here, we're going to beat up Tiamat. Who's going to say no? Who's going to say no? That's too dangerous. I'm going to stay in my little keep. No one.
Well,
Great
anyone
point.
under 10th level.
Right. Yeah. Okay. If you're level 1 to 3, okay. Yeah. It's like we're gonna beat up Tiamat. No, thank you. Please run away. But assuming that you have a shadow of a chance, right? Why wouldn't you?
Sure. There's one thing is, I mean, I can only speak from my experience, but I don't see my players feeling, um, they don't feel like powerful, epic characters even around 6th or 7th or 8th level. They're not feeling like that. You usually only start to feel like even if you have lots of money and some cool magic items and a good armor class, it's not until you start acquiring followers and higher level henchmen, but especially followers, the people that come and just worship the ground that you walk on. That's when they start feeling like big shots. And at that point they start acting in an ostentatious way themselves and making grand gestures and dealing out largesse to people, and then everything becomes a higher stake game for them. And if there is any advice I would give to GMs or DMs that want to have high level adventures, I'd say just make sure that you get your players' characters there. And one way to make sure you do that is make sure that you're dangling sufficient hooks as far as rewards go, as far as treasure goes, because the lack of treasure will keep your campaign from progressing to a level where characters are high level, since that's where all the experience points come from. So that would be advice that I would give to someone. Make sure you're putting enough treasure in your game, and then give the players ways to spend it, so that they're constantly looking for more. But that will drive the cycle that gets them into high levels, and then things can take on epic proportions.
What is enough treasure for you?
For me, it depends on your play group. It depends on how often you meet, but I would stock the potential, especially through the mid levels, that they should be leveling up or have the potential to level up, on a 1 to 1.5 month basis.
Well, you do real time, and if you had to express it in sessions, basically.
So in sessions, I usually go in, I would say in weekly sessions, I'm looking at 4 to 5 sessions. That's the potential. And then
Yeah,
you make
because
sure that
part
you
of the
have enough.
treasure is concealed, right? And they not all groups are going to find it for sure.
That's right. And if they want to be, more cautious, or if they're um, not careful, then they won't find it, right? So, or they'll find it slower, and so they won't level as fast. But you want to have that potential there because when the potential is there and the players are working hard for it, then they will find their efforts pay off. You don't want to have players that are working hard and not being rewarded, because that will lead to frustrated players who are tired of playing around with third level stakes when they're experienced enough that they could be taking on 7th level challenges. I think that we don't have campaigns. I think one of the reasons why you see so many low level adventures being published is because that is what a lot of dungeon masters are most experienced running because their campaigns don't last very long because players get tired of the campaign. And the surest way for a player, an ambitious player, to get tired is if their ambition is not being met. Now, that's my opinion, but I mean, my experience bears that out too. Happy players are ones that see their efforts going rewarded. The idea that treasure is unimportant came about when in the late 80s, the people who were writing adventures for TSR said, well, we should be paying more attention to the drama, story. We need to do things to downplay this killing and looting thing going on here. You have whole campaigns like Bryn's Dragonlance that comes out where they say, yeah, gold is worthless. Gives you nothing. There's no one wants gold in this world. Don't worry about the treasure. We'll make sure you level up. Don't worry. But then that doesn't motivate players to take action. That doesn't drive player action. So I'd say just embrace the treasure seeker, because that's what drives the game. Everything else will come from it.
That's an excellent point because there's nothing like having a 1-ton gong made of pure gold to not just engage the high level players, but also, I mean, that's problem solving in and of itself. How the heck do we get out of this very dangerous place? That's fun gameplay right then and there.
I think it ties into also this idea that you play it as you know, you play the game for that there's a challenge aspect to it as well. And part of the challenge is also the ability to excel or fail in this case, right? Whereas with um this more like story driven episodic format, then it's you're basically training players to jump through a hoop. And if they behave like good little boys, the DM will give them XP. I mean, I guess you're still sort of like you can still excel. But the cool thing about D&D is that uh, the way to do it with the treasure, it's like the treasure is defined, right? The way to advance is defined, but how you obtain the treasure is kind of like up to you. And there's uh, part of it is concealed, part of it might be destroyed if you're not careful in AD&D. There's sort of like all of these. There's this granularity to it that I find personally very exciting.
Well, there's nothing lamer in D&D that I have found than having a really big drag out epic encounter or fight with monsters or an NPC that you hate and getting the upper hand and defeating them, and then there's no reward afterwards. There's no treasure. I have seen very, very glum faces in games where that happened. And, counterwise, I've found that, a bunch of third level characters get past a nest of giant spiders that, were poisoning their people and offing them and then finding a secret treasure room behind it. They're like, oh my gosh, all this death we just went through was worth it. Thank the Lord, and they're just celebrating and high-fiving each other and loving every minute of it. So you have to make sure that you reward them for the danger that you put into their adventures. And at high level play, you're going to have high level dangers and you need to have high level rewards too. It's not enough to say, great, you saved the world. Okay, saving the world. So what? If we didn't save the world, we would end our campaign. We would end these characters that we've worked hard to create. Now, there has to be something actually, I can't say tangible because it's still imaginary money, but there has to be some sort of reward that they can take away from things in order to make the stakes pay off for them.
Yeah,
Yeah, something in game. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shock.
I was just gonna say you don't really want a high level adventure to be a Pyrrhic victory, right? Because they're gonna be expending a lot of resources to take on whatever the threat is. So they should be rewarded with not only enough resources and treasure to replace what they've spent, but also money on top of it, because no one's going to do stuff just out of the goodness of their heart, so to speak.
Well, yeah, it's no fun. Like you might role play a character that's like, well, I'm a lawful good character. I do it out of the good, but that's not how the game works. With of course, you want to advance for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's only gonna be one paladin in the party.
exactly.
There's
And
only
even a
one there's only
player of
one
that
guy who's
paladin is going to
required to
want the
donate all his
Holy
money.
Avenger sword or something like that, right? You don't want to go like, oh yeah,
I was gonna say even the paladin, like weapons and armor, and I mean treasure's broad, right? Like
Yes.
I want to go find that sick hammer of thunderbolt or whatever, right? That I've got my eye
yeah.
on or heard rumors about like that. For me as a player personally, that's a huge motivator on top of the stack of gold, right? I would almost say at those higher levels, higher levels, that is my focus. Like that's the next thing that's going to move me to to be more effective at whatever it is I'm doing, right? So those type of things, and then just overall the fun factor of requiring this is like sick mythological weapon or whatever is, I don't know, highly
Those are
motivational.
the great hooks to dangle. Those are the legendary weapon or item, yes. That's why we have artifacts and relics in the Dungeon Master Guide. They're not just there for
Although
show.
true, although these artifacts and relics, I feel at least the way that they're usually used is um they're and I that's probably the right way. Is that they're they give you almost like extreme power, but it's almost always set up in such a way that if you push your luck, you're going to get yourself destroyed. It's almost like you fly too close to the sun, and that's kind of the interesting part of it. So like you find this object, but if you keep it too long, you're going to get demolished. But if you have that risk reward factor that is par for the course in D&D, right? Risk manage risk, then it's great. You can use it just long enough to whatever get through a certain challenge or obtain a certain objective. So.
Well, there is game balance, Prince. I mean, yeah, they all have malignant effects and side effects that you have to deal with if you wanna you have to cut off your hand if you want the hand of Vecna to work for you, you know? And then, yeah, that's just Gygax doing game balance. There's it's you gotta give something to get something.
Yeah, it feeds that gambler in all of us. It's wonderful.
But yeah, like even if you cut off your hand, right? Like eventually it's going to, at least this is the case with a lot of artifacts that I've seen. Like eventually you're going to get yourself totally wrecked if you make too much use of it. So this will be something that
Yeah.
you
That
you
too.
kind of want to hold on to it, or maybe like hold back with it a little bit until it's get what you want, and then maybe get rid of it.
Some players do, but
Yeah,
I've
the
seen
other
more
ones
just
get
The greed.
downward spiral.
Yeah, the
Love it.
greed sets in.
Love the
Absolutely.
destruction.
get
Absolutely.
obliterated. Yeah.
Well, that was a great one. Anybody else want to add to that before we kind of close this out with a couple last questions? Okay. So instead of walking through your whole process for the adventures you guys created, kind of focusing back on your actual creations and submissions into NAP 3, as you were preparing it and as you were writing it, was there any particular process or tool or motivation for specifically for the high levels that you were creating for that really helped what you were doing? I know we've kind of touched on some of this a little bit tangentially, but just very specific kind of practical advice that you could pass on. Like you said, so for some of you this was the first time writing high level modules. For others it was you've done this for a long time. What helps you in your process create something that you go back to the well time and time again or discovered for the first time?
Yeah, I actually will say that mine was surprisingly similar to the usual process. The scale was up, but I started with a map, which is what I usually do. If I have a vision for a given area or given dungeon, then I will usually just start by mapping and mapping and mapping and mapping. In this case, it came up to be some 40 pages or so of maps, a lot of stuff there that, I obviously splinched and moved everything together. But then after that, it was just room by room keying, kind of thinking as everything goes. There's that central main concept, but everything when it comes down to the details, you just have your central concept and you still go for it. That's kind of where I was coming from. I actually found it very similar to lower level modules in that respect.
Yeah, I have to agree. My process was almost the same as usual as well. Uh, well, actually, for me, the mapping part is only the second step. The first step for me is to come up with a foundational, a basic idea. Sometimes I used Tome of Adventure Design for this, but this time I was inspired by rereading Robert E. Howard's Conan stories. So I have had uh, I don't know, a basic idea, and my first step after I have this basic idea is always to make a list of all the ideas that pop into my mind, and I also try to list a few ideas that are as far from the basic idea as possible, so it's not going to be overly thematic. And after I have this list of ideas, I usually go through this list a few times and throw out everything that doesn't sound that good on a second thought, and also I throw out all these ideas that I can't possibly work with. And after that, I will have a distilled set of ideas for locations and conflicts and such, which gives me some basic um well, a basic vision of the map that I have to draw, and then I usually start drawing the map, and that gives me additional ideas, and so on. So this time it was quite the same actually. The only thing that I had to keep in mind that the player characters will have powers that they usually do not have on a lower and mid level. So the first thing that I did after this initial list of ideas was to check uh, what spells are on the spell list of characters like magic users, clerics, and druids, and what are the special abilities of high level monks and such. So I can think of it so that the players will not be able to basically short circuit the whole adventure.
I like that. Very cool. Anybody else? Anything? It's okay
I
if you
would
don't.
just I echo what they said. My process was very similar to writing lower level stuff. I use a spreadsheet to figure out what my treasure counts are going to be, try to plan out how many encounters of a particular type I want, how many traps, how many monsters, how many empty rooms. And then it's the pulling teeth part of trying to design a map that's thematically appropriate. I think with regard to high level adventure writing, one of the tougher parts is actually thinking of a theme that is going to be appropriate scale to characters of a high level. Something that's going to draw them out of their domain and give them an incentive to go out and adventure. So that's the toughest part is you have to get that idea. And for that the three different ways that I've looked at the 3 different nap contests, I did 3 different high level adventures, and for one, I paged through the monster manual, reviewing the devils, and decided that I wanted to do something that was devil themed because devils are a high level creature that present a lot of high level challenges. For my second one, I took a page from Michael Moorcock's his Stormbringer books to get an idea of something that was appropriately epic and high level in scope. So that one was inspired by literature. And for the third one, I took a high level TSR adventure that was crap and I rewrote it and redid the maps and such. So that's finding that theme is the trickiest part. After that, it's just adventure design, but on a larger scale.
I'm going to echo some of that. My process, similar to what I usually do, actually. JB, your stalking per Moldve post has been my guiding light for all the adventures I've made, and it worked out, I think, pretty well.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll say that I deviate with AD&D, I deviate a little bit from Moldve in that I usually, I put in a slightly higher monster count, and I also increase the number of locations that have some type of treasure. I found that you want probably about a 40% treasure drop rate, that is an encounter area that has treasure, in order to just kinda keep feeding just enough to players to keep them moving along. So Moldvay is more like 33% for treasure or 32. And I do about 4 and 10. There'll be some sort of treasure in a location.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm still pretty much Moldvay. Yeah.
And I've also got to add, not really a tool per se, but as advice, leave yourself time to iterate. Leave yourself time to, after you're writing, leave it fallow for a bit and come back to it in order to edit. Because some of us, well, some people like JB can make a great adventure in a month. The rest of us, making an adventure took us 6. And it's a process you can't really rush. I think the best things in my adventure came out of this continuous cycle of giving it time and iterating and iterating and iterating in a way that couldn't be rushed, especially for a high level adventure where making sure everything coheres and really fits the scale is essential.
I think the biggest difference for this one is the amount of time I actually play tested it. Normally, I'll do playtesting 2 or 3 times. I think this one got play tested 10, 15 times. I know my players were sick of running a lot of the battles over and over
Oh, wow.
in this
Same
case.
guys. Oh man.
Now I wasn't running the whole campaign, or the whole what I would imagine a campaign coming out of this module would look like. Each time it would be like, okay, this week we're gonna test these battles and we're gonna see how that works out. All right, this week we're gonna just do a dungeon crawl. You don't have your armies. I want to see if this dungeon's actually dangerous enough for high level, that sort of thing. But they were all sick of the Ice Lich's lair by the end of it.
That's
Oh,
pretty
jeez.
smart. No, I first of all, that's hardcore. I love that. And I mean your work paid off, clearly. Um, but I didn't quite do something similar for Split Hive, but it is kind of like so big that that's like for the audience that was my entry, right? Um, it it is so big that any single adventuring group moving through it is unlikely to be able to hit all of it. So I did do different runs with uh, uh, with different groups, and one played all the way through, and with another one we played for like whatever 8 hours in 2 days. And we just did the first 2 levels that the previous group skipped and all that stuff. So um, doing stuff like that, it does allow you to. I feel you kind of get uh, it can reveal weaknesses or possibilities that the players might try that you had not considered, and that you can kind of like refine your writing, and uh, it's just good. It's fun. It's nice to see if the work that you put in actually if, you have an idea in your head of how it would go, and playtesting is the ultimate way to see if it actually worked out like that at the table.
And some of those actually made it in some of the results. Like one of the alternate starts I presented was the thief pre-gen having a rebellion going on. That was one of the playtest sessions when my players were sick of it. He was like, you know what? I don't like that the king's not sending a bigger army here. We're kind of understaffed. I'm just gonna rebel and fight them instead.
Nice.
So that kind of leads back into players being able to do whatever they want at a high level too, where just because I've presented this this region that's under threat doesn't mean you actually have to do anything to solve it. You could just leave. Like that's always an option or whatever.
Cool. Your castle will probably be near the region.
Yeah.
Usually, but not always.
Nice. And the last one that I had, question for you guys again, just open it up. You don't have to answer it, but if you would like to, it would be helpful. We have advice for the new DM or player it's just starting out fantasy adventure gaming and wants to get to high level adventuring or try out high level adventuring or experiment or test it, whatever, but is interested in it. What advice would you give the new individual that's looking to do that?
I would suggest, for the players especially, be prepared to accept some level of jank, especially if you're running something like, say, AD&D, or if you're running BX at high levels, which they weren't necessarily designed for. You're not going to get the kind of smoother, more balanced, if we can say that, experience of lower levels. You're going to wind up making a spell list and finding that actually no, you really should have picked something else entirely different, or you completely misunderstood something because you have a bunch of new abilities you didn't build up to organically, and that's something you have to know is going to happen ahead of time, accept it's going to happen ahead of time, and accept that that's in a way part of the fun of jumping right into high level play.
So, Nick, you're saying for those individuals who just want to jump into it and give it a shot without building out the campaign, just understand jumping right in without an understanding, there's going to be some jank.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, you're
As
kind
my
of
players
skipping.
learned very clearly in the playtest.
Yeah, you're gonna skip. Since you're skipping the learning curve of what we would like. I like JB call it, right? It's organic growth, or just if you build that long form campaign that you're a player in, and again, this would be my personal one: is start in a campaign with a DM that's run long term campaigns before, right? And then move all the way through the levels organically. Not everybody can do that, but that is the optimal way to do it. So if you can do that, obviously you're going to learn all that and you're going to kind of smooth over. There won't be jank by the time you'll know all your spells, you'll know all your um, abilities, you'll know, what different monsters are, right? Like you get through that full learning curve. And that's the best way to do it. Also, too, you're building the setting, right? Like we've talked about, you guys expounded wonderfully on how the setting will all of a sudden become the hooks, the motivations, and the reason why you do things and what you engage with at higher levels. Because becomes its own living, breathing thing. That's the optimal way. But if you want to jump into it, I think there's value to that as well as just okay, what are for like a brand new GM that's never done that but wants to do it, and the same thing with the players, right? I think that's where y'all's modules come into play for that and jumping right in. But you got to expect that you've skipped the learning curve, so you're going to have some issues and growing pains.
Well, so a couple pieces of advice for a DM who wants to just try out a high level play with one of these as a one shot. I think that's fine. Um, just the two other pieces of advice besides making sure there's enough treasure in an adventure is one with high level characters. Um, don't be afraid to take the kid gloves off because they can handle a lot of things. So don't feel bad about using those high level wandering monster tables that are in the DMG. And oh, let's find something off of the level 9 monsters for these guys or the level 10 even. Um, in the appropriate numbers, they can handle it or they can figure out a way around it or they have the resources to retreat and go gather reinforcements if they need. So that's one thing. But the other piece of advice is to tell them not to feel the DM should not feel like they need to artificially nerf the players' characters. You don't need to throw in things like, okay, these undead cannot be turned, or other types of these spells don't function. They can't use teleport here, or they can't use pass wall. Uh, you don't need to do that. The characters are still fallible enough. They can still get themselves in trouble. They can still get their armor eaten by a black pudding or a rust monster. You don't have to nerf them at all. You just have to make sure your challenges are appropriate for them, and it will. One of the great things about playing a high level character is you've kind of earned some of those abilities. You've earned those abilities to circumvent challenges and they need to be able to play that. They need to be able to experience that. They need to be able to blast the vampire with their powerful turning ability. They need to be able to, fly over the opposition if necessary. Let them do that. You just play it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. When you're getting into high level play, you need to be able to let your players win against opponents that are lower level at that point. There's definitely a tendency of people trying to constrain their players when they reach higher levels and reduce their abilities, as opposed to making challenges that require those abilities, which isn't quite the same thing. Like the unturnable undead is one I've seen in several people's home games specifically. Because like, oh, cleric shouldn't be able to just do that. Like, yeah, they should. They reached ninth level.
Yeah, and that's one of the. I think in published adventures, it's almost like the dividing line, right? Uh, the truth of the matter is that making making a genuine like sort of like high level adventure that really just sort of like pushes people to use the the giant arsenal that they have at their disposal is um can seem a bit daunting in the beginning. So a lot of people they do end up artificially constraining it, and you're kind of trying to force people to play like they would at lower levels, only with a few extra, with higher numbers. But yeah, that is very unsatisfying. So I guess the advice to just sort of like dive in, not be afraid to get your hands dirty is pretty good.
Prince, anything else you wanted to bring up or anything else, any other points anybody wanted to make before we sign off for the day or evening? Depends on where you're at.
I don't really have additional points. I think it was very cool that all you guys could make it to podcast to talk about your process, your entries, what your games look like, why you decided to join, that sort of stuff. I think hopefully it'll do a lot to maybe pique people's interest or curiosity in what this more like high level gaming is kind of about. Um, that to sort of illustrate that this is not it is neither like boring and stodgy, nor is it like so hyper complicated that you have to watch all 4 seasons of Rick and Morty in order to be able to do it. This can be achieved by mortal men with a little bit of patience and dedication and craftsmanship. And it's for anybody trying to put stuff out there. This is sort of terra incognita. Okay, this is more or less unmapped territory. I feel there's stuff here to do. Uh, stuff to discover in a way that is not really anymore the case the in the lower brackets. So I would say, dig in, see what all the fuss is about.
I suppose I would just actually shield myself here,
Yes,
although I don't actually get any money from this, in case anyone is wanting to pass something that they're writing by an editor. I'm not a professional by any means, but I like doing it. I like editing. I like reading people's stuff. So contact me by my blog or by Discord.
and what is that blog or Discord, or will we put it in the
We can definitely put all that in the show notes, but by all means, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, SPHAREL is the blog, also called A Distant Chime, and I'm just nroman1938 on Discord. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome.
Right on.
You guys can shill your stuff too. Let's do the shill. It's the shill minute.
I have a blog called BX Black Razor that is not as populated as it with posts as it once was, but there's some good stuff on there.
and you also make your own. You have a few games I think that you made, including a pretty cool BX Warhammer Fantasy conversion.
Yeah,
I'm legally allowed to call that.
I've written some books that you can buy both at Drive-Thru RPG or you can get print copies directly from my blog. Some people sell them on eBay for hundreds of and thousands of dollars, but you can buy them directly from me for like $30. That includes shipping and handling. So don't go to eBay. They're still in print.
Very cool. Show me.
Yes, well, unfortunately, I do not have a blog, and even though I have a podcast, but it is in Hungarian, so I do not really think that many of the listeners of this podcast would very much enjoy that.
But you have written, and not only is it great and has it won the prestigious the best, okay,
Yes,
but
that's true.
it's even won the even more prestigious Snap One award. Okay, you have written an award-winning adventure.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
And yes, and also EMDT have released another adventure of mine a few years back, which also have dinosaurs in it, just like my current entry. So if anybody is interested, it can be found on EMDT's webshop.
EMDT is the publishing label of the celebrated and occasionally, I was going to say the famous and occasionally infamous Gabor Lux, aka Milan. Yeah, very cool. Definitely check that one out.
Yeah, we'll
Finally,
definitely link. We'll link
last
up
but
to.
not least. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say we'll link
Sorry.
up to all that in the show notes.
Sure. And Shock, is there anywhere people can reach you?
Yes, I am. I have a Substack that is floodedrealms.substack.com, as well as a very boomer looking website, just floodedrealms.com. And you can find me on Twitter on the same handle. I'm somewhat active there. Right now, I'm still working on the rest of my reviews for the Commodore's Adventure Site contest. I have been very slow because I'm not a very good reviewer, as it turns out.
I was going to wish you like luck or assure you that you'll get better after having reviewed stuff for like 10 years. I'm not sure if I should. Maybe I should be like, no, don't do it. The curse. But
Well, after I finish these, I'm going to go back to my usual, which is mostly play reports and occasional ranting about my esoteric views on elf games. So
We look forward to that.
very good. Very good.
Commodore dropped off, but his blog is Cold Light Press, and he has also written several adventures for publication that can be found on Drive-Through.
Yes, he goes by, I believe it's Ben Milton. Is that correct?
Definitely Ben
I think
Milton.
that's his
Ben
name.
Milton. Yeah. Sorry, just I want to get it correct. That I don't. I believe there's other Bens.
Yeah,
Gibson, right?
Ben Gibson. Yeah.
Gibson.
Yeah. Oh, am I actually? Oh, it is Ben Gibson. Sorry, it's not Ben Milton. That's right. That's where I.
I thought you had. I
was
thought
good.
you had a funny joke there, Prince. We'll just.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good joke.
Okay.
Good joke.
Yeah, that was a great joke. You'll fix this in editing, right?
100%. I'm
Do not
definitely.
fix
I'm
this in
definitely
editing. Leave
not
all of this
changing
in.
any of this. But yeah.
So informed. Yeah. Yeah, I can already envision the. Oh yeah, I don't know what happened. Oh, really? It's still there? I could have sworn I edited it out. Anyway, um, I guess I'll do a little bit of shilling if people will permit me. So it's the No Art Punk Adventure Contest, um, abbreviated NAP or just No Art Punk. You can get they're all free, right? You can get the first volume on drive-through. Just type in No Art Punk. You can get the second volume. Here's where it gets complicated. You can get it out on on it.io, okay? And it was number one in the category of art punk for a while. Very good. And number three will also be releasing that for free on it.io. Usually these adventure design competitions, I make it pay what you want for a while, where the proceeds will go to a charity. In this case, it's going to be split between the probably Janelle DeCase's memorial fund and an AIDS charity. Um, but if you just want to check out the adventures, that's fine with me too, right? They're there to check out, play for free. Um, I also have a blog which goes by Age of Dusk or Prince of Nothing blog.wordpress.com. I review a lot of adventures. I do play reports. I have rants, all that good stuff. And you can find my particular adventures. You can find those online as well on Drive Through RPG under the Merciless Merchant. There we go. I believe that was all of the shilling.
Lith Hive, high level.
Slith Live.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. And of course, the true NAP 3 contest winner, Slip Hive, judged unanimously, best adventure and runner up. No, I've also written an adventure that has gotten a best of by 10-foot pole, so highest possible rating. It's about, I believe it's almost 100 pages long. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's called Cliff Hive. Check it out. Um, we're looking into possibilities of doing a Kickstarter for a print-on-demand version. Um, if you if you want a physical copy, if not, you can check out the PDF. If you don't have any money, get a job. But in the meantime, it'll also be in NAP3. NAP3 will not have the updated Kickstarted version of the PDF, which will have extra bonus content. But you can still check it out there. That's it.
Yes, I concur. Become gainfully employed. Definitely a good life
There we
strategy.
go. Or maybe just get out a credit card loan. Just get a large credit card loan. You can pay it back later. You'll get a windfall, a sudden windfall. The important is that you buy. The more PDF, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Cash advance on that credit card.
Thank you,
Solid
yeah.
financial choices from this podcast.
There we go.
All right, gentlemen. Well, it was a pleasure having you all on. Thank you so much. We'll make sure we have all these links in the show notes. If you're interested in checking out any of these gentlemen's products or wares or advice. And once again, thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Gus.
Thank you.
Yep,
Have
thank
a
you.
good
Thank
one.
you for the opportunity. It was nice talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
everyone.
All right. Fantastic episode. I hope you all felt the same. It was great to sit down with Prince and the winners of the No Artpunk contest number 3 and discuss high-level adventure gaming. And I hope, like myself, you all caught the bug to play more high-level adventures, to incorporate those elements into your game, and to reach for those great heights. As usual, we'd love to have you come over to the CAG Discord server, hang out with us, chat about adventure gaming, and play some games. So thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to speaking with all of you soon. Take care.